Aaron Rodgers said nobody gave him a deadline. He said that in March. He said it publicly. Then the Pittsburgh Steelers put $15 million on the table and pointed at May 18, the start of OTAs, without ever calling it a deadline. And now this weekend, Rodgers is flying to Pittsburgh. No deal is signed, nothing is done. So what exactly changed? Let's start with what we actually know. NFL Network insider Ian Rapoport broke this story. Rapoport said Aaron Rodgers is expected to visit the Pittsburgh Steelers this weekend. And not just visit. Rapoport said Rodgers will likely play for the Steelers in 2026. That word likely matters. When Ian Rapoport uses likely, he is not guessing. He is telling you what his sources inside the building are saying. Rapoport does not use that word lightly, but here is what he also said. No deal is done. Nothing is signed, and until something is signed, caution is the word. Because we have been here before with Aaron Rodgers. Announcements that led nowhere. Timelines that stretched for months. The Jets thought they had their franchise quarterback in 2023. He tore his Achilles 4 plays into the season, so the report is real. The visit is real. But a visit is not a contract. And in the NFL, the only thing that counts is ink on paper. Now let's talk about why this is actually happening, and why the timing tells you everything. The Steelers did something unusual. They placed a $15 million unrestricted free agent tender on Aaron Rodgers. That number is not random. That is a serious investment for a 42-year-old quarterback who has not played on a winning team in years. What the tender does is simple. It tells Rodgers and every other team in the league that Pittsburgh is not exploring options. They have made a decision. It also removes one of the biggest reasons NFL negotiations fall apart. The money conversation is already done on Pittsburgh's side. Rodgers knows the number. He knows what they are willing to pay. All that is left is whether he says yes. Here is the part a lot of people are missing. A $15 million tender for an unrestricted free agent is not something teams do as a feel-good gesture. This is Pittsburgh telling their locker room, their coaches, their front office that Aaron Rodgers is the plan. You do not put $15 million on the table for a backup option. You do that when the decision has already been made internally. The Steelers decided. Rodgers had not. And that tension is exactly what has driven this story for the last 2 months. May 18 is the start of Pittsburgh's OTAs, organized team activities. This is when quarterbacks are supposed to be learning the offense. Building chemistry with receivers. Getting reps with the playbook. If you do not have your starting quarterback by May 18, you are already behind. Your receivers are running routes with backups. Your coaches are building game plans around a player who might not be on the roster by September. That is a real competitive problem, and every team in the NFL knows it. So, the Steelers made May 18 their internal forcing point. Not publicly announced, not sent to Rodgers in a message. But everyone inside the building understood. By OTAs, we need an answer. That is exactly what Rodgers told reporters he never received. Back in March, he said no one had given him a deadline. He said he was taking his time and was not being rushed, but May 18 was always there. The Steelers never had to say it out loud because the NFL calendar says it for them. And now, with 2 weeks left before OTAs begin, Aaron Rodgers is getting on a plane to Pittsburgh. Connect those dots yourself. Remember the title. Rodgers said there was no deadline. He said it publicly in March. Now he is flying to Pittsburgh 2 weeks before the only date that actually matters to the Steelers. So what did he actually mean in March? One possibility, he was being truthful. Nobody gave him a hard verbal deadline. The Steelers never called him and said you have until May 18 or we move on. That conversation may have never happened. So technically, Rodgers was not lying. But here is the other possibility. Rodgers has been in this league since 2005. He knows when OTAs start. He knows what happens to quarterbacks who show up to training camp without reps with their receivers. He knows all of it. He has lived through every version of this calendar for 2 decades. So when he said there was no deadline in March, maybe he was buying time. Not to make a better decision, but to make the decision on his own terms. And the moment the calendar started closing in, the moment May 18 started to feel real and unavoidable, he moved. That is not a man without a deadline. That is a man who quietly made his own one and waited until the last possible moment to act on it. That tells you a lot about how Aaron Rodgers operates. It also tells you why Pittsburgh had to be this specific with their approach. So why the Steelers? Rodgers had interest from multiple teams this offseason. He was not sitting in a room with one option. But Pittsburgh kept showing up as the most serious conversation. Mike Tomlin is one of the most respected coaches in the NFL. He has never had a losing season, not once in nearly 2 decades as head coach of the Steelers. For a 42-year-old quarterback who wants to win and not just play, that record means something real. Tomlin is not a yes man. He runs a disciplined building, and veterans respond to that. The Steelers also have pieces around the quarterback, a receiver room that can work with a veteran, accurate passer, an offensive line that took steps forward last season, and one of the most reliable defenses in football that keeps them in games even when the offense struggles. For Rodgers, this is not about a rebuild. He does not have time for a rebuild. At 42, this is about finding the right situation for 1 or 2 more years and leaving the game on his terms. Not getting cut, not finishing on a bad team going nowhere, not limping out the back door. Pittsburgh gives him a real shot at winning. A team that believes it can compete right now, a coach who has earned his trust, a city with one of the most loyal fan bases in professional football. That is what you get on a plane for. The visit itself is not just a handshake and a stadium tour. Rodgers will sit with Tomlin. He will meet the offensive staff. He will go through the playbook and the scheme. He will want to know exactly how they plan to use him, what the offense looks like, whether the system fits what he actually does well at this stage of his career. Rodgers is not the same quarterback he was at 35. A good coaching staff knows that, and he will want to see whether Pittsburgh's staff knows that too. The Steelers will also be watching him closely. A visit is a two-way evaluation. They want to see how he communicates, whether he is genuinely bought in or just kicking tires, whether he is coming to Pittsburgh to compete or coming to collect a paycheck and manage a decline. Both sides will walk out of that building knowing exactly where things stand. And if the answer is yes on both sides, Rapoport says a deal is likely. But remember what Rapoport also said. Nothing is done until it is signed. Let's be clear about what is actually on the line here. For the Steelers, this is bigger than one quarterback signing. Pittsburgh has been searching for their next franchise quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger retired after the 2021 season. Kenny Pickett did not work out and was traded to Philadelphia. Mason Rudolph was a bridge. Russell Wilson was a one-year bet that did not pay off. 4 years, 4 quarterbacks, 4 seasons of uncertainty at the most important position in football. If Rodgers signs and plays well, this changes the entire conversation around this franchise. It gives Pittsburgh a real competitive window. It gives Tomlin a chance to add to a legacy that already belongs in Canton. It gives the fan base something to believe in heading into the fall. For Rodgers, the stakes are just as high. This may be the last real shot he gets at ending his career the right way, not on a Jets team that fell apart around him. Not watching from a sideline, with a legitimate chance to win, with a coaching staff that respects the player he is right now, with a defense behind him that can carry the weight on hard days. Both sides need this to work. That shared need is exactly why the visit is happening at all. So here we are. Aaron Rodgers is flying to Pittsburgh this weekend. The man who said nobody gave him a deadline is walking straight into the only deadline that ever mattered, May 18. OTAs, the Steelers' forcing point. The $15 million is on the table. The visit is confirmed. Ian Rapoport says it is likely. And in NFL reporting, likely is as close to confirmed as anything gets before ink hits paper. But until that contract is signed, this story does not have an ending. We have seen Rodgers take his time before. We have seen visits lead to nothing. We have seen likely disappear overnight. What happens inside that Pittsburgh facility this weekend determines whether the Steelers finally have their quarterback, or whether this search carries into training camp and the season starts without an answer. The deadline Aaron Rodgers said did not exist. It is standing right in front of him now.